Hello everyone, welcome to our self-care peer sharing. Hello everyone, welcome to our peer sharing call for this month. The topic for this month is effective self-care strategies for mentoring program coordinators and mentoring program staff. We can go through some quick introductions here, just one second. As we have said, this is a roundtable discussion, so please make sure that you don't have any background noise as you are unmuted for this call. Share any questions or ideas of your own. Now we're going to quickly go through our moderator introduction. Our moderator for this call is Katie Orlando, and she will introduce our panel, and she will take over the call from there with our discussion. Katie, are you available?
Did you unmute everyone? No. Unmute all.
Are you there, Katie?
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. Great.
And as Michelle said, everyone is unmuted now. So if we're hearing some background noise, just please make sure that's not you. And we want this to be roundtable and everyone participate. But if we're hearing a lot of background noise, you're going to have to mute yourselves, or we're going to end up having to mute some people. And I really want it to be, and I know Katie does too, wants it to be participatory. So with that, we'll turn it back over to you, Katie. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thanks, and thanks everyone for joining us today. As mentioned, my name is Katie Orlando. I'm the Executive Director of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northeast Iowa. I appreciate those who are on the call today. We have a few folks that are going to be serving as panelists. They'll be the first people that we'll have some questions in a minute. They'll be the first people to answer. But we also have some other folks who have since joined us who have some interesting knowledge to share about a particular piece of our topic today, which is self-care. Our panelists officially are Christy Jenkins. Christy is the Prevention Director for New Opportunities of Carroll County. Lynn Carroll is the Executive Director of the Heart of Iowa Big Brothers Big Sisters based in Marshalltown. And Jennifer Brose is the Executive Director and founder of the Job Foundation based in Waterloo. So before we hear from our panelists and I start asking questions to the group, I just have a basic introduction about self-care, work-life balance, and then we'll jump into the real meat, the peer sharing piece. So I'm really excited about that. So as all of us, I hope, agree, happiness is prevalent in our culture. And many studies have been conducted to show that the happier an employee is at a workplace, the harder they'll work. However, only 48% of employees in the U.S. report being satisfied with their job, only 48. This dissatisfaction with work is more than just an unfortunate truth. It's a quiet crisis in our country. Employee stress alone costs American companies an average of $300 billion yearly, which is a startling statistic, considering how now employees are working more than ever. Between 1979 and 2007, the average employee worked 10% more from year to year, adding an additional 4.5 weeks of work per year. And this is attributed by longer work days as well as employees taking less vacation and less sick days. So what's causing the problem? A lot of research that I did for this call demonstrated that it's because of our digital age. We have the ability to work everywhere now, which seems like a good idea, but some of us, I'm sure, have found that we also work at home, at coffee shops, on a plane, at a child's concert, etc. So even though it's more convenient, it turns out that now we're working everywhere until any time. In addition, in this country currently, the average American works 47 hours of work each week. And 80% of Americans report working after hours, so after business hours, for roughly 7 hours per week on average. And that actually amounts to an entire extra day of work per week. So instead of talking about work-life balance, it seems like our society is talking more about work-life integration. We spend so much time working that overall life satisfaction in life is nearly impossible without being satisfied in the workplace. Consider how much time you actually spend on the job. If you start working at 18 and retire at 65, you would clock in a total of 110,450 hours at work, which is a lot. So, and that's actually more than 40% of our entire waking adult life. So today's topic is self-care, taking care of yourself and thinking about work-life balance. I like the idea of having this as a peer sharing call. And when I was talking to some of my colleagues that I was moderating this today, I didn't receive a lot of votes of confidence because I am just as guilty as probably some of us are on this call about not maybe taking care of ourselves as much as possible. We all work for a mentoring organization, so I think part of it is that we care about our work. We have passion. I don't think probably any of us are doing this. Our primary motivation probably isn't the salary we're making. I can imagine it's probably something in the lines of we want to help people, we want to give back. And so with that comes some repercussions to our personal life. It takes a hit sometimes. So our three panelists and then others on the call, I'm looking forward to their insight, what they have to share. I'm also going to be taking notes for my employees listening. And we have some questions that we'll use to shape the call with. And then depending on the direction of our discussion, I'll have some additional notes to add at the end. So for starters, I thought we could start out with our first discussion question, which is what have been barriers to your work and life balance at work, and how have you overcome those barriers? And we'll start with our three panelists, Christy, Lynn, or Jennifer. If either of you want to start first and talk about your barriers and how you've overcome that, that would be great. So who would like to begin?
Not me.
Is that Lynn?
No, that's Jennifer. Go ahead, Lynn. You've got the answers.
Lynn will.
Can you
Hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm going a little bit.
Okay, I had you on speakerphone, so I'll take you off.
When
I began my position here as the director 5 years ago now, we didn't have the financial stability to be able to rehire somebody to fill my part-time position. So I started out by doing the director's job and continuing the part-time position. So basically had my hands full.
Excuse me, Lynn.
Yes.
Lynn, we're getting an echo. Do you have your mic and speakers on your, did you call in and also have your mic on and maybe on your computer?
I have that turned off.
And you're not talking through the speakerphone again. You're talking just through your phone line?
Just
my phone, right?
Okay, I'm running out of ideas then. We're just getting an echo, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I also have two children and a husband, and I volunteer at church. So I have found that I was just feeling a lot of stress because there was so much that I was involved in and that I was responsible for. And I really felt like the reason I got into this position was because God really called me to this. So I figured I wasn't alone. So I used that as my support system, knowing that I wasn't managing all of this all on my own. One of those things that I have found to be very helpful is to really calendar things. I have a calendar at home for our activities that are going on, who's got games and meetings and class, at church or any of that kind of thing going on. It's all laid out there on the calendar. It makes it easier for them to know what's coming up without always having to check with me. It also gives us a chance to kind of see where our whole week looks. And maybe if there's something we have coming up that we'd like to do, then we have an opportunity to really look ahead and see where that fits. But the balance with work comes with a sense that the calendar kind of helps determine a great deal of those opportunities that we have in a manageable way. So I have taken things like knowing that we need to do recruitment at certain times of the year. We kind of have a cycle to our work world. And so tried to look at those in with the idea that, there are certain times of the year that we really need to beef up different kinds of advertisement or recruitment opportunities. So I've taken the calendar and kind of laid it out as for different things to do during those months and calendar them out as in, in January, it's National Mentoring Month. We're going to promote Mentoring, we're going to do this with the local radio station, have something in the newspaper, those kinds of things. And then also knowing that we have Bowl for Kids' Sake, which is one of our big fundraisers coming up, that we calendar that out. And then you keep continuing through the rest of the year. You know that the school is starting in the fall, so you start maybe in August and then September, really helping with some more of that publicity. So you calendar it out, and then you can kind of plan it into what you need to have done. And I've done that with also grant writing, our fundraisers, what we need to do as staff, also looking at the responsibilities that the board does over a period of a year and what we ask of them, things to review at board meetings. And if you calendar them out, that kind of gives you that plan for acting on. And then you're not caught by surprise and waiting to the last minute on things. So there you go.
That was really great, Lynn. Thank you for sharing that. I do agree that scheduling is really important. I know that some mentoring agencies in Iowa, like some of the folks that weren't able to join the call today, shared that they do a time study once every year, and also when new employees start. And it's just having your employees keep track of how much time you're spending on each thing you do every day. So if you're checking email from 8 to 8:30, and then if you're making follow-up calls, it's just really trying to get new staff and then staff teams as a whole to think about what they're doing and making sure that they're scheduling themselves enough time during the day to avoid people staying later or just not prioritizing well. So it sounds like you have that pretty well handled. Thanks for sharing that. Christy, would you like to share next?
Certainly. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, good. New headset. Wasn't sure about how it was going to work today. Gosh, so I've been in my position 4.5 years now. I started at the end of a grant year, writing year-end and one project end report. So one of my issues personally is anxiety, and so that's something I think just when we're talking about all of those things that are on the schedule, for me has been really focused on how do I just keep myself kind of in that cool place so I can focus on those things and stay on top of it. And one of the things that I did actually not too long ago, I went on a self-improvement mission, and I'm also a licensed mental health counselor, and so I actually went to another counselor to work on learning some mindfulness practices, and that includes some meditation, and it includes really just being aware of your body and acknowledging things, and it really helped me in terms of, okay, I'm really overwhelmed right now. I'm going to take 3 minutes, do this breathing thing, get myself grounded, and then I can get going again. And the other thing, kind of what Lynn was talking about, and I kind of use it in the term of boundaries, and I have my deal breakers and say, okay, these are the things I'm willing to do, this is what I'm not willing to do, and if that's in terms of when we talked about, you know, those extra hours at night. Well, when I started my position, I didn't have a kid, and my husband was starting a business, so we were all about the work. Well, now my daughter will be 3 in April, and I'm like, you know what, evening time is family time, and if that has to be compromised, I need to make a compromise somewhere else, and I have to find a way to fit in all of those important things in my life. And sometimes, you know, it feels a little icky, but like we talk about, and when we care for others, we can't care for others if we don't care for ourselves, and I always keep that in my mind as well. And the other thing was scheduling. My husband and I send each other calendar invites. So that way we know what's going on. So if I would happen to have a late meeting, or if he would have something else, because we're all also involved in several other boards and other things, that helps us keep everything together. And I would say of the trainings that I have been to, one of the best tips I have gotten to kind of keep myself as buttoned up as I can be is keeping all of my to-dos and my scheduling and my timelining all in one place. And I have found OneNote, it's a Microsoft product out of Microsoft Office, to be extremely helpful for me. It's kind of set up like a multiple subject notebook. And so there are main tabs, and then you can put in pages between those. And so I have a master to-do list, and then I use that to plan out my following week. And so I know I've got X, Y, and Z that I need to have done, and I would like to do 1, 2, and 3. I look at my calendar for the following week on Friday, and I plot things out, and I say, these are the things that I need to have done, and then I work in my other items around them. That's kind of what I got for you.
That's great. Yeah, no, I've never heard of the OneNote program before, so I might need to check that out. That sounds like it would actually meet the needs that I'm looking for. So.
And it's also nice too, you can share that with other people, so you might have a notebook set up within your agency to share information back and forth too.
Great. And you briefly mentioned meditation and described a really great exercise to do. Jennifer, before I turn to you, we have somebody joining our call that has to step off in a few minutes. It's Danielle Ballard. She's a new AmeriCorps member at Big Brothers Big Sisters of Northeast Iowa. And Danielle was telling us at our staff meeting last week about something that she does to make sure she sets aside some time in her life. It's yoga, but it's called hot yoga, and I just thought this was like the neatest thing. So Danielle, if you would just share a little bit about yoga and the different types of meditation that you do.
Yeah, thanks. So I kind of came to yoga as a result of the same thing, like work-life balance, and needed something that just helped my body unwind, but also challenged me physically. And so the yoga I started to practice is Vinyasa Flow, and that is a yoga that is a little bit quicker, and it matches your movements with breath, and so it's also helping your body calm down because of the breathing that you're doing, and you're also getting some cardio, and it's hot in the room. Usually temperatures vary starting from like 93 degrees to 98 degrees, and then as people are in there, it obviously raises, and the room can get really hot, but so you're getting a really great detox too, which I think helps with stress relief, is just that like cleansing. And one thing I had to do is I just had to start scheduling myself for that and really making time for myself and saying like I'm going to go to yoga 4 times a week and here's when I'm going to go, and sticking to it. And through the yoga practice is when I started to become involved with the meditation as well. And what's cool about meditation is that there's so many different things you can do. You could do a walking meditation, you can do breathing meditation, simple meditations, you can do eating meditations and things like that. And so it's really neat because it's so individual that I think anyone can do it. And what's nice about the different yoga forms, there's hatha, there's a lot of different things that no matter what your level is at or what you're looking for, that you can find something that helps relieve that tension and helps your body kind of cope with all of the stress that we're under when we're in a field that is underserved.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Danielle. So again, for those who might have joined the call late, the question is, what have been barriers to your work-life balance at work, and how have you overcome these barriers? And Jennifer, are you ready to share?
Sure. First of all, Katie, thanks for all the work you did on this and for that great research. And I appreciated everything Lynn and Christy had to say as well. And I think those are all things that I would say are important as well. I guess I want to go back to when Katie talked about work-life integration. Am I echoing? Am I bad?
It's not that bad. I can hear it, but there's a little echo, but I think you're still audible. Does everyone agree? I think you're fine, Jennifer. Keep going. We'll see if it gets better.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just on my laptop. I haven't done this with you before. Anyway, one thing about me is that work-life integration I really believe in, especially, I guess, just for me. I mean, I'm just being honest. This is me. The reason I was like, I don't want to go first is because if you looked at my life, I'm working a lot, but I'm also very happy. I'm kind of unique in that my father started a political fundraising business when I was 5 years old, and at the age of 5, I began working 40-hour work weeks all summer long, and worked on about 8 to 10 hours on the weekends at the age of 5. And I did that all growing up. My sisters, we all contributed. We were addressing envelopes, stuffing envelopes, stamping envelopes, wicking envelopes. And so I had to, as a kid, learn how to somehow make work fun. My father was a efficiency Nazi, I would say. So we had to do this when he wasn't around. But when he wasn't around, we would develop different games and ways to make this work, which was very boring work, somehow kids play. And I think that I kind of grew up with that. I don't have this idea that, I mean, there is a difference between work and family downtime life. There is, but it's a very, I don't know, it's just more integrated into my life than it would be for most people. I have two children, they're 14 and 12. I have a child who's recently diagnosed with some pretty serious medical problems. So all of that has, made me focus more on my family lately. I'm also a licensed mental health counselor, so I have a small private practice. I like a variety of tasks. But I guess the one thing is just to find a way to make it fun. And for me to understand, it is not the mentoring position, our Job Foundation, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's not at all, and it never will be. I'm answering text messages. I'm dealing with parents. I'm doing stuff. I was with a kid helping her with homework until 8:30 last night. And yet I'm up again at 8 o'clock for my other job. And yet, I don't know, I'm okay. I don't work as many hours as I used to when I was younger. But I think the more important thing is to watch out for your warning signs and to know when you're starting to get overwhelmed and when you need to take a break. And that, for me, this is a great thing to have this conference call. For me, my schedule began to kind of clear for today, so I just yesterday said, you know what, I'm canceling this, I'm canceling that, I'm getting a massage, I'm doing this this thing right here, and I'm going to see one more client tonight, but otherwise, this morning I saw one of my supervisors, which is like my own personal therapy. I'm going to leave town this weekend, and I'm going to go up and see one of my mentors that moved up to Minnesota. Because when you see those warning signs come, you have to begin to do some of those things. But that's the way I roll with it, and I don't know if that would work for anybody else, but again, I think that our jobs are something we tend to enjoy, hopefully, because we're not looking for fun maybe as much as we are meaning. At least that's me, and there's great meaning in what we do. That's about all I have, and I'm sorry.
No, I think you shared something really important, and actually I was going to bring it up at a later question too, so I'm glad that it's already on the table. That there are some people that, work-life balance means more work, less life balance. So I would put myself in that category as well. I just recently relocated to Iowa for the job that I have now, Big Brothers Big Sisters. If I wanted to focus more on family or something else, maybe I would have stayed in the Northeast of this country, not Northeast Iowa and now. But I think it just works for different people, the amount of time you spend on work. And I agree with you completely, Jennifer, that you just need to be really in touch with your warning signs if you are one of those people that really gets the high on working all times of the day. You just really need to know when enough is enough and take that break. And I'm sure there's people on the call that can relate with that as well, who ignored warning signs and we didn't take that break and, now have learned a lesson because of that. So I think what you have to say is completely valid, and it sounds like all of our panelists are coming from a different place, which is what peer sharing is all about. So thank you so much for contributing for everyone so far. Before I move on to the next question, does anyone else on the call have anything else to share? I know some other folks, I see some other folks in the room right now. So anyone else want to share your strategies? Angie or Christy, Corey, Stacy, Rita? If not, it's okay, I can keep going.
I want to add one thing. Someone had said something about massages, and I just recently learned if you have a flex spending account, especially at your work, massages are covered if you get a prescription. I have said prescription, and I'm able to also use my sick time to go do that if I need to do that, like towards the end of the day. So. Nice. It's kind of a fun little thing.
Do you mean the health savings account? Is that what you mean? Like
not a health savings account necessarily. You probably could use that also, but this is called an FSA.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't heard
sometimes they call it a cafeteria plan.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Well, thanks for sharing. Not hearing anyone else chime in, we'll move on to the next question. So the next question is, what are some things that you have done to keep your staff or volunteers, or to help your staff or volunteers prioritize self-care? So you've got it down for yourself. You know your warning signs. You have some plans in place. You know what you need to do to feel happy. What do you do to help coach others? Who would like to start? Christy or Lynn?
This is Christy. I can start. One of the things that my staff have done, we don't provide staff with phones, but they have smartphones, and many have asked to get their work email put on it. And while I don't tell them they can't, I strongly encourage keeping that boundary. I know how attached and how immediate I feel I need to respond to people when I see that little light blinking. And so I really encourage my staff to keep those boundaries, and if they don't have to have an immediate contact, that I really encourage them to support that space for themselves. And some other things I've done is, like, during staff meetings, I show them those OneNotes, and I've gone to some trainings on different ways to organize and different prioritization strategies. And so we do that in our staff meetings, and we just kind of run through the examples. One of the things I talked about earlier was off my master to-do list, I block out my following week, and I kind of have a little system on how I do that I'd learned from a training I went to. And so any little piece of organization or any thing that I see for self-care, I try to pass along, and I also try to keep that with them too, that I'm not contacting them after hours unless it's like an absolute last minute, something's on fire necessary. And the other nice thing is our agency is very family focused to begin with, so I think that also helps that we're not bottom line productivity. That's definitely something we look at, but it's one piece of the puzzle. And I also make sure that they use all of their vacation time and things like that. I don't want people losing that. That's about what I have.
I think we're getting some background here. Is there any way to mute Angie? Okay, thank you. Lynn or Jennifer, what are your thoughts about methods that you've used to help your volunteers or employees maintain a work-life balance?
This is Lynn. We have all part-time staff except for me. So they're also juggling quite a bit of other things in their lives. Sometimes it's just the family aspect, and a couple of them actually have another part-time job. So we really talk about the parts of work and how to kind of pace themselves on those things. And they do not have to. Part of it is just really knowing when it is that you've got something else that's a priority, and the flexibility that we have here at the office really makes it possible for them to kind of balance this in the middle of everything else that they've got going on. We don't have anything magical. We just, I just say, well, if you got it, then if you have a child with a concert or a game and you need to go, then just go, and we'll get that done tomorrow. And that seems to work out pretty well around here. Nothing too out of the ordinary.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Lynn. Jennifer, anything to add?
I think the only thing I'd probably add is, two things. One is, yes, helping, like someone was talking about like a master list. Like I've done the Joe Foundation 10 years now, so I've got a list of all year long, in January you're doing this, 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 and this, in February, da-da-da-da-da. So I have one full-time employee, and it's helping her come up with her own list so she knows where to be. And then being able to say to her, like you said, that her son's got a ball game, or she really wants to go do this. Okay, well, helping her understand and prioritize what really needs to get done. Look back on your list. What do you have to do? If you've got your stuff done, I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not really counting like, did you work 40.0 hours? I always know she's probably working more than that, so just go. And even if they worked a little less that week, that's fine. I know there's going to be another week, and it's going to be crazy. Someone told me once, balance is a myth. No one ever gets it. It's just chaos, and then you need recovery time. And when you get to the point where you don't have any recovery time, then you're too busy. But that's I would say so. The other thing is, so I'm a licensed mental health counselor as well, and I'm certified to do the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And so that's what I say, know your warning signs. Like, I know my warning signs because I know me more, but I also know my type. And Susan, I've helped her to, I hope, I've worked with her long enough to know her warning signs too. So if, I think sometimes an employee who works for you is a little hesitant to say, you know what, I'm not feeling good, or I've got a family thing I got to deal with, or whatever. And sometimes you can't say, okay, fine, take some time off because you got stuff going on. But at least, it's like, well, okay, look down the road. 3 days from now, you're taking that day off. I've actually had to say to her, you are not coming in tomorrow. You're done. Go home. You're taking the day off. Just because she's not horrible, she's not a wreck, but I can just see that, she's not doing as well. And you got to give them permission to do that if you can, I do think.
That's great feedback. I think that I completely agree with you. I think that because all of us are from mentoring organizations, I think that we probably have like a seventh or sixth sense when it comes to knowing what your supervisees need and just knowing their body language and when they've hit their wall and when you need to kind of help them see the light. I don't know who did that research, but I'm sure it exists. However, I did find some research from Forbes. It's a 2015 study, just some more statistics about why it's important that you make sure that employee happiness and employee satisfaction is important. I can imagine that probably most of our mentoring organizations are using our budgets as well as we possibly can. And so part of that is making sure that you have employees and volunteers that are effective and efficient at their job. And that directly relates to how happy and satisfied they are. So a Forbes 2015 study found that companies with happy employees outperform their competition by 20%. Happy employees are 12% more effective. Happy salespeople, which I know that we're not technically, our job title isn't salesperson, but for any of us who do marketing, recruitment, and or fund development, stewardship, I consider myself a salesperson as part of my job, so hopefully no one will get offended by that classification. But happy salespeople produce 37% greater sales. 36% of employees would give up $5,000 from their annual salary in exchange for being happy at work. $5,000 is a lot in exchange for happiness. Close work friendships build workplace satisfaction by 50%. Another statistic found that people with a best friend at work are 7 times more likely to engage fully in their work. Interesting. And employees who report being happy at work take 10 times fewer sick days than unhappy employees. So I think a lot of that makes sense. I just had never really attached a number to that before. My favorite stats from that collection are the 10 times fewer sick days are taken by employees who are happy. I could definitely see that. If you like your job, you come to work sick. It doesn't really help office morale when everyone else gets sick, but I mean, it's not going to keep you home. And then 36% of employees would actually give up $5,000 of their annual salary in exchange for happiness, a little happiness. So that's really interesting. I thought that was staggering. Moving on, unless anyone else has anything to contribute, I know that I think we muted a few people because of the background noise, but if you want to unmute yourself and answer that question about how you essentially mentor your staff and volunteers to be balanced, I'll give you a few seconds to unmute and start talking. Okay, hearing no other contributions, we'll move on to our next question. So, how do you handle people in your life who only call you when they need something, always leave you tired after you see them, or never have time to listen to you? I call these types of folks time suckers. They're needy, they never help you out when you need them, and they can really bring you down. So I'm interested to hear what our panelists have to say about that one. So, Jennifer, would you like to go first this time? Have you any thoughts about this question?
Okay, sure. As a counselor, a lot of people come to me with this question, so I'm kind of laughing. First of all, all of us deal with people in our work that could be described that way, our clients, I guess you would call them, and yet we can't just, we still need to help them. We still need to deal with them, and we might kind of even expect that in some ways, and that's okay. That's appropriate that they come to us. It's a one-sided relationship. That makes sense in work. Are you talking more though about like in your personal life?
It could be anybody. I think we all have those people at work and also in our personal life. So I think this one transfers between the two.
Yeah, and at work, like you expect that. You don't expect them to be giving back to you on the level you're giving to them. But even so, that's okay, that's fine. But yet there are still some where you get to kind of a breaking point where it's like, I need a break from this person. And what I do and what I always recommend people do, like I said when they ask me about that in counseling, is screen your phone calls. That's not bad. I mean, if anybody calls me, I'm going to put on my phone, like I'm going to record who that was so that when they call, caller ID is a beautiful thing. You don't have to answer, and you don't have to feel guilty that you didn't answer. You can let it go to voicemail. You can wait to listen to your voicemail until, okay, maybe the end of the day. I suppose we're professionals. We can't wait too long. But, it's okay to do that. And sometimes if I'm thinking about people to come to me in counseling and, people they're on the phone with somebody and they're being irate and they're just being ridiculous. They're saying nasty things or they've maybe written a bad email or something like that. I think you need to just, listen and read it long enough to get the gist of it, but hang up. Stop reading it. It's toxic. It's not important that you read or hear. I mean, you got the basic point. They're mad, Let it go at the end of that. I guess it's just putting some boundaries and not being afraid to say that. I've actually, my husband's a pastor, and he's just doing some rural pastoring right now, so it's a little different for me. But in the past, it was, between my two jobs and being a pastor's wife, it's like somebody's always knocking on my door asking for something, and it's exhausting. And so I finally decided that they were just going to have to line up and wait, and that's okay. And so I actually started telling people in our church, I'm listening to myself. I'm listening to what I think God's asking me to do. And on certain days, I just get tired. So I'm just like, if I don't answer your phone call, it's because I don't have the energy to give you anything. And I don't mean that to be mean, but I just know that I'm not in a good place. So if I can kind of anticipate, oh gosh, if I answer this phone call and they're going to say, and I already know, like, I don't have much margin in my emotional world to deal with much, or even my time. If I kind of already know that, then I'm not answering the phone. End of the story. I mean, I know that's kind of not the right thing to do to go off the grid, but I think sometimes you got to protect yourself that way and then not feel bad about it. I mean, because I think sometimes people do that, but they feel guilty for protecting themselves in that way. I think we all need to do that sometimes.
Thank you for sharing, Jennifer, and I think your approach is perfectly fine. I think I've done it a few times this week already, so thanks for sharing. Lynn, how about you? How are you able to balance those folks in your life that always seem to need something or want something and never are there to help you in exchange?
My example in my head is my daughter. She tends to easily find something that she's going to just complain about, and sometimes you have to listen, and you can listen and do a task at the same time with her, and sometimes I just look at her and go, and she keeps talking and she vents and she feels better, and then we move on. I don't necessarily have to fix anything, and I think sometimes people really just need somebody to vent with. And if we can apply that kind of thinking to other situations and be a listener, that works for some people. But I do know that it's very important because not everybody is just needing to vent. Some people really just struggle with being able to find something that's life-giving for them in their own lives, and so then they become toxic in a lot of ways. I do believe that we have, that I sometimes can find that how to turn that around to make that a positive. How can you look at or get them to start to come up with what might be some of those positive solutions that they come up with for whatever they're dumping on you about, and then maybe we'll help turn that around. But I also think there's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. And, I'm sorry, I do have a meeting I need to go to, so I can't give you much more time, but I appreciate you calling. And maybe come up with a plan for when it's better for them to have a conversation with you. But you need to set the boundaries and the limits on some of that. and it's not easy. But yeah, I have a ministry background, and so I don't just always feel like I can walk away from someone who really feels like they have to vent.
Sure.
So anyway, that's what I do.
That
And all I
makes
have
sense.
to do with my daughter, which is same for a lot of people, is sometimes you listen and you nod your head, or you ask a question that makes them to ask them to think just a little bit differently about it, and sometimes they figure it out. So anyway, manage the conversation is kind of what you have to do, or be content with being a listener for them. That's what I do.
Thank you for sharing that, Lynn. Very helpful. Christy, how about you? What are your thoughts on this topic?
Oh, I would strongly echo everything that's been said. And one of the things one of my mantras that kind of helps me with that is not my circus, not my monkey. And sometimes I have to remind myself that exactly I'm listening. Their problem is not my problem. And I can listen, I can try to get a feel from where they're coming from, and ultimately I need to hand it back to them and saying, oh my gosh, that's really tough. What are you going to do about that? And use some of my love and logic that I use on my kiddo just to empower them and really keep myself as that sounding board and nothing more. And in terms of my time, certainly screen my calls or make a date to have that talk when you're going to have the time and energy. But pretty much what's been said is my approach as well.
Thank you, Christy. I love that analogy. Good job. Are there any other folks on the call who have anything else to contribute? How you would handle folks in this situation? I'll wait a few seconds before moving on to our last question. By call today, but that's okay. Thank you, panelists, for everything you've contributed so far. Our last question, it kind of ties into some of the strategies that have already been shared, but what is your approach to making time for leisure activities? What do you guys have to say about that? We'll start with Christy.
For me, it comes back down to organization and just kind of making my things my things. Sometimes I just, put on my calendar busy or something else that's inconspicuous so I don't feel like I need to be questioned about I'm going to get my massage, or I'm not working until 7 tonight because I have roller derby practice. It's just having those boundaries, and the last couple of months I've decided to rework my day and to build more health into my day by bed same time, up same time, and up same time is right now 4:40, so I can get to the gym by 5, and that's a great start to my day. And I've also been able to cut out caffeine, and so when feeling better, my day is longer and I can do more fun things, but nothing too special there.
Thanks, Christy. I think waking up at 4:40 takes a lot of discipline, so that's pretty impressive. Lynn, how about you? How do you make sure that you schedule in the leisure activities into your days?
I basically schedule things. I know my kids have semester tests this week, and they're out tomorrow on Friday at the middle of the day. And so because of that, I think that's my cell phone going off in my office. That helps, doesn't it? But basically, I know they'll be done at noon tomorrow, and if they don't have school, then I tend to like to take the afternoon off or get off early. So I kind of look at that and schedule some time and block some time out that way. My secretary would laugh if I talked about vacation, because I'm not one who tends to get all my vacation in. But I may spend part of my summer in the afternoon sitting at softball games for my kids. And so I just, you tend to find those ways to put that into my schedule for having downtime. And then, part of the key thing of all of this is really figure out what's the small stuff and what's the big stuff that you need to stress about. Stressing doesn't help us in anything, but the small stuff's not worth spending the the energy and concern about. And the big stuff, you just work it and make the plan to be able to how to deal with it. And it seems to make it much more manageable. And then leisure, then you can relax when it is time for you to just have some quiet and shut down time, or to plan the fun with your family.
Or Lynn, you mentioned an interesting point about vacation and how your secretary would laugh because you don't often use it all. I think probably some of us could also fall into this category. A CNBC study in 2014 found that only 77% of U.S. workers actually use all of their paid time off. They took an average of 16 days in 2013 versus an average of 20.3 vacation days in the year 2000. One of the things that we've actually done at our agency, and I imagine that others do it too, just for a funding perspective, is we make sure that we cap our amount of vacation days a staff member can accrue. So if you don't use them by the end of the year, you do lose them. And it kind of has helped a little bit. We still have some work to do at my agency, but it kind of forces our staff to really do pre-plan their vacation time so that they are taking it consistently throughout the year and don't lose it, because that's never fun. That's kind of the anti-incentive. Jennifer, how about you? How do you make sure you have time for all of your leisure activities?
You know, it kind of makes me laugh. Even just going back again to my childhood, I really had an abnormal childhood, I suppose, and yet I wouldn't trade it for anything. The idea of leisure activities, discovering what you like to do, that's been kind of an adult thing for me, to try to figure out what would be leisure activities for me, since I grew up working so much. But I do have those things, but I would say mostly my strategy is sometimes, especially when my husband was in a different job, leave town. I mean, that's the only way. I'm going to go somewhere and not have someone know me and stop me, or, turn off the phone. It used to be, you could go out of range, but now I got Verizon, I'm never out of range. But figuring out what it is I like to do, I think, is half the battle. And maybe it's not just me. Maybe it's women or anybody in general. You're so busy taking care of everybody else. You're so busy running everything else. The idea of what you enjoy to do, when you were little, maybe there were a few things you knew you liked to do, but now you're older, and maybe like exercise. I can't exercise anymore due to a medical condition. So it's like that used to be a big part of my life, but I can't do that. So what else am I going to do? I enjoy gardening, and of course that's mostly in the summer, so I can't do that right now. But just spending time with some friends, calling someone on a phone. I don't schedule it because my whole life is too scheduled, and if I have to schedule my fun, it's no longer fun for me. That's just me. I'm an odd one. But I don't want you to think I don't have fun, because I do. And I think you have to take a look at your overall life and say, well, am I succeeding and feeling good in my personal relationships and the relationships that matter to me the most? Is my house okay? Is it not falling down? It's not infested by rodents and such. Okay, maybe I'm doing all right. and if I can smile at the end of the day, and I've juggled all of that, and I can still have a little fun sometimes, I guess that's the best I can do. I know, like I said, I'm probably not the best for this workshop. Sometimes I've been known to say I'll rest in heaven, because that sometimes is the way my life gets, is that it will have to take that. But I do get rest before then. I would like to schedule a little more time to go see a play or go to the symphony. I just got to convince my husband that would actually be enjoyable. That's all I have.
Thank you so much for sharing, Jennifer. And again, I appreciate the three of you. You have different perspectives, and I think that's what makes peer sharing so meaningful, especially when it relates to this topic, because we're all different in our profession. We all have different motivations for doing what we do, and I think you all represent one of those perspectives. So thank you so much for sharing. Does anyone else have anything to add about this topic, how to schedule in leisure time into your day? I know I saw Val jumped on, so I didn't know if she had anything to add, or anyone else that is also listening. All right, hearing no further comments, I have one thing to close on. One of the resources that Mary sent me for this call is from tinybuddha.com. It is called, let's see where I did this. It's called 45 simple self-care practices for a healthy mind, body, and soul. I'll email this link to all of our participants so that if you're interested in what the others are that I don't read. But these are really easy, tiny self-care ideas for different areas, for the mind, for the body, and for the soul. And a lot of these are really easy fixes. So a lot of what our panelists have shared today involves a lot of thought, pre-planning, but these are easy, like probably could do them as you're thinking here listening on this call. So for the tiny self-care ideas for the mind, and again, I won't read these all, I'll just read the top 5 in each category. So one of the ideas is to start a compliments file. And I'm sharing this one because my staff have actually already started to do this in our Waterloo office. They're doing this together. They have a jar, and every time they get a compliment from somebody in the community, from one of our mentors, our mentees, or families, they're writing it down and putting it in the jar. And when one of them is having a rough day or stressed or just things aren't going their way, at any point they could go to the jar and pull out one of the compliments and kind of keep it with them for the day. And we're hoping that this will help keep their perspective that don't focus on the negative things that are happening. Focus on all of the positive things that we're doing. We're making such a big impact, and we're hoping that it will really make the difference and keep them focused on the bigger picture. Another idea is scratch off a lurker on your to-do list. So a lurker is something that's been on there for ages, and you're just never going to do it. So I have a few to-do items that I put on my list the day that I started at my agency in May, and it is now almost a year later. So I've set myself some timelines to get those things done, and some of the items I've realized are no longer a priority, so I've just crossed them off. Makes me feel a lot better. Another idea for how to make a tiny difference in your self-care for the mind is to take another route to work. So if you always go the same way, maybe challenge yourself to go a different way tomorrow. Take the back roads, enjoy life, keep your brain stimulated, and it helps keep your brain healthy as well. Another idea is to unplug for an hour, just turn everything off and free yourself from the constant bangs of social media and email. And then another idea under the tiny self-care ideas for the mind was edit your social media feeds and take out any negative people. Facebook added a feature probably a year ago where you could not unfriend somebody, but block them from your news feed. So if any of you out there are social media users, you probably have somebody that constantly posts throughout the day just complaining, and that's fine. They feel like they need to use social media to vent, but I don't necessarily want to read it. It kind of brings me down. So I've been known to kind of block people from my feed. We're still friends, but I just don't have access to what they're writing anymore. In another section, tiny self-care ideas for the body. This was already shared earlier, just by taking some deep breaths. Oxygenate by taking 3 deep breaths. Breathe into your abdomen and let the air puff out of your stomach, or out your stomach and chest. So I've been known to do this when I'm on conference calls, when I'm not talking. I'll put it on mute and take the opportunity to just kind of be by myself, listen to the presenters, and just do some deep breathing. On the complete opposite end of the spectrum, another idea is just to get down and boogie. We don't do this at my current Big Brothers Big Sisters agency, but at one of my last agencies in New Hampshire, 3 o'clock every day was dance o'clock. And one of our younger staff members started this because we had a pretty upbeat office, but this was her contribution. Every day at 3 o'clock, if we didn't have any important people in our office aside from our staff, like no one was coming to visit for the first time, she would just turn up the radio on her laptop, and we would just all get out into the common area, shake it off, dance it off for a few minutes, Grey's Anatomy style, and then head back to work. And that was helpful for us because 3 o'clock was always kind of like the end of the day after a long day. You're just ready to be done sometimes, so dancing it out really made a difference. Another idea, which sounded interesting, I might try this, is to narrow your food choices. So pick 2 healthy breakfasts, 2 healthy lunches, and 2 healthy dinners, and rotate them for the week. That sounds like a good idea for people that are cooking for one. Lots of leftovers. So maybe that could be something that people try to start doing a better job, or even better job eating healthy. Just narrow it down to 2 choices for each meal. Another idea for tiny self-care ideas for the body was to give your body a treat. pick something from your wardrobe that feels great next to your skin and wear it. And then the last idea that I'll share in this section is take a quick nap. I think that we can all agree that napping is great. 10 to 20 minutes can reduce your sleep debt and leave you ready for action. And then the last category was tiny self-care ideas for the soul. One idea that I think we probably can all relate to is to help someone. Carry a bag, open a door, or pick up an extra carton of milk for your neighbor. Just something easy to pay it forward, and that's proven to make a difference in people's lives in terms of self-care. Another idea is write out your thoughts. Go for 15 minutes on anything bothering you, then let it go as you burn the paper or cut it all up. I've done that before, and it actually works. Choose who you spend your time with today. Hang out with the radiators who emit enthusiasm and positivity, and not the drains whose pessimism and negativity robs energy. So we've already kind of focused a little bit about that in our peer sharing piece. And then the last thing, which probably we could all do a better job at least I can speak for myself, I can, is to ask for help. So big or small, but remember to reach out and ask folks because they're probably asking you. So in closure, little wins or little changes often win the day. With a little bit of attention to your own self-care, the fog will lift. You'll feel more connected to yourself and the world around you. You'll delight in small pleasures, and nothing will seem quite as difficult as it did before. Like a car, you must keep yourself tuned up to make sure that you don't need a complete overhaul. And incorporating anything new into your day will help you stay in tune with yourself and in tune with others. So with that, that's all I had. Does anyone else have any closing thoughts or comments, something to leave us with? While we're unmuting everybody, I would like to thank again our panelists for helping us today. I really appreciate you, and I really have enjoyed listening to your thoughts and comments on the different pieces of self-care and work-life balance. I'm going to start practicing some of them myself. So again, thank you to Christy Jenkins, Jennifer Brose, and Lynn Carroll. Their contact information is on the screen for those who are have a computer in front of you. And if you are on your phone, I can certainly connect you with any of our experts if you would like to speak with them further about their strategies. Any further comments for the good of the whole before we call it a day?
Thank you very much, everybody.
This is Mary at Our Mentoring Partnership. Just want to thank you to Katie as a provider board member for taking us on and leading the calls, and thanks for all the participants. We have recorded this and we'll make it available to everyone else. We had some inquiries. I know there were some other conflicts today with some other training, so I know that others were interested in all this great information. Really appreciate it. Congratulations to all of you for making the time to think about this topic today. And since it's about dance o'clock time, probably should wrap up. I'll make one more pitch if you haven't registered yet for the Day at the Capitol on February 3rd. We encourage everyone to join us for that day. Thanks so much.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.